everyone to our advocacy briefing from our steering committee member, Mike Dulong, who's a senior staff attorney at Hudson Riverkeeper. So Mike, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see all of you. Thank you to Shino and Leonel and Anna and everybody else in the organizing committee for having me. As Holly said, I'm a senior attorney with Hudson Riverkeeper. I've been doing this work here in New York City on sewage and stormwater for the past 4 or 5 years. I see my predecessor in this position is actually on the line very early morning for him, who's now Puget Soundkeeper on the other side of the country. But it's good to see all of you, and thanks for indulging me. I know you all know this work as well as I do. I appreciate all of the great work that DEP is doing. Dr. Balsi is doing really great work on the Green Infrastructure Program and on other things. I think, and really, I'd be glad to be making all the same decisions and utilizing resources in the way that they are if I were in their position. But DEP is severely constrained by financial capacity. These green infrastructure and sewage capture are very expensive. And the city for the past 100 years has been underinvesting in sewage capacity, especially over the last 20. The city's water rates compared to other cities are artificially low. They're much lower than other similar cities. The city has not increased those in the same way that other cities have. And so what we really need to see is funding and investment. And I think that's sort of the theme of a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, and sort of this advocacy outlook and what is going on today in water quality advocacy. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the state's criteria by which it that it holds waters to, and what's the way to put this? The water quality standards for New York City's waters are supposed to, in most cases, support now I'm looking at myself. Well, I'll stop doing that. They're supposed to support a swimmability use, a use of primary contact recreation. Waters that are classified, especially, and I'll focus on these waters that are classified as SD&I, were set for this swimming use. The state set the use for these waters in 2012. And when I say SD and Class I, I'm talking about waters like the East River. And when I say SD, I'm talking about Newtown Creek, Gowanus Canal, and other similar waters. But all of them were supposed to be set for primary contact recreation, which means it should be safe to swim in those waters. And that the state should set criteria for the sort of numbers or pollutant loading levels for those waters that would support the use, the pollutant loading that would be safe for that use. Unfortunately, what the state bases those numbers on is a scientifically indefensible fecal indicator bacteria, fecal coliform. EPA has found that is not fecal indicator bacteria is not protective of human health. Instead, what should be used is Enterococcus. And so we do have standards for Enterococcus that have been set forth in guidance by EPA, but the state has not adopted them. And hopefully I can share my screen and show you the difference or how this why this matters. So let me share this one. And we're going to look at numbers from one of my favorite waterways. Get to this. This is a table from Flushing Creek. And the first column shows the water quality criteria for Class I. Half of Flushing Creek is Class I, half of it is Class SC. And what the state is relying on are these fecal coliform numbers. And as you can see, this sort of second column, it says attainment percentage. The state and the city are going to meet that in Class I waters. They're going to meet it 100% of the time. For Class SC, where the fecal coliform levels are a little bit stricter, they're going to meet it a little bit less of the time. 78% is not good, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible compared to what I'm about to show you, which is the next column. If you look over and you can see these are what the state should be relying on. These are what we hope that EPA, we are in court trying to get EPA to set levels for Enterococcus for the state and for these waters. They are not going to meet, some of these areas are going to meet water quality standards 3% of the time. So there is a major ongoing problem. And this is one waterway in New York City. And this is the same for a lot of waterways, especially the head ends of tributaries. Think, Coney Island Creek, Gowanus Canal, Bronx River. If you head up into those waterways, there's a lot of sewage coming out. There's a lot of stormwater runoff, and they are inundated with fecal bacteria, both human caused and animal caused. So what do we need to do to make the waters better? First thing that we need to do is set some, how do I stop sharing it? So to set some criteria that are scientifically defensible. The second thing that we need to do is sort of reopen the long-term control plans. The long-term control plans are based on those fecal coliform bacteria, not Enterococcus. We need them to be focused on Enterococcus. There's also a concern that they are based on a 2008 rainfall. And 2008 obviously it was a rainfall year that was representative of the time. It is not going to be representative of 2050 as climate change leads to increased precipitation in New York City. And so we need those long-term control plans to account for what we are going to see when they're actually implemented. How much rainfall is the city's system ready for? And it is not going to be ready for that. So we do want to see those open. One of the, I'll pull this up, but one of the, okay, see this. One of the bills that we had pushed for over the last few years, and this bill would have to be reintroduced for this coming session, is Intro 1618. I hope you can see this. Intro 1618 would require a number of studies that would help address some of this. And I'll just talk about 3 studies that would be required by this. And it's worth pointing out that Chino showed the stormwater management plan that the city came up with. And that study was a product of previous city legislation that required the city to look at the risk of flooding from stormwater. And so these studies are useful. They come in very handy when we have emergencies like Ida to identify those areas that are in jeopardy. And these 3 studies are ways that we think that could guide the city's policies on water quality going forward. The first would be integrated watershed management plans. These long-term control plans, and I think Pinar agrees, these are the same. The waterways receive both CSO, combined sewer overflow, from 60% of the city, as well as what we call MS4, or stormwater direct runoff in the separate sewer system. But the long-term control plans only address that 60% of the city, the CSO part, the combined sewer overflows. There is no integrated plan for both of those things. And it's not like the waterway is sick from only one. The waterways are impaired by both. So we need a plan to deal with both. And we need a plan to deal with all the runoff from streets and industrial sites that are going straight to the waterways too. The second piece of this legislation would require green infrastructure inventorying for all the opportunities in every sewer shed leading to those discharges. So for all the waterways where there is a long-term control plan, we would want to see a plan that is outlining every opportunity, public, private, and any combination of those, where the city could sort of lay out a plan for green infrastructure investment looking forward. And the last is a study on chlorination. The city has a plan in some waterways, Flushing Creek, Alley Creek, to chlorinate some of its CSO runoff. SWIM for years has been very skeptical of this practice. This practice probably won't work. It only addresses one issue with CSO, which is pathogens. And it won't work because of the amount of time, how quickly you would have to douse it. And then on the other end, we're worried that there will be toxics, either chlorine or chlorination byproducts that will be coming out of the pipe that will actually be worse for that water body, worse for the ecosystem than sewage. And so that bill is something that we would like to see reintroduced, and we'd like to encourage city council members to be thinking about these types of plans that could really have an impact on the city's water quality looking forward. The second thing I want to talk about is green infrastructure. There has been so much great work done on green infrastructure, the 11,000 practices that have been put in by the city. But as of the end of 2020, the city is still not meeting its requirements under the consent order. And so it has not put in the amount of practices or the amount of acreage that would capture stormwater, retain or detain rainwater and precipitation that it's required to. So what we need, the program is maturing where the amount of area and the right of way to install these practices is drying up. So what we need are partnerships between DEP and other city agencies. There is not enough, or as this program is maturing, what we want to see is more engagement with other agencies in the city, so that it's not just a burden on DEP to fight with other agencies to install green infrastructure, and that all these agencies will be responsible for it. We had talked about this before, workforce and growing a workforce that will maintain these assets looking forward is going to be crucial. These are things that are ongoing, and that will need to be maintained. And it is a significant investment, but there's also a lot of opportunity for green jobs. These have tremendous benefits for communities, so we want to see these maintained. And last, Pinar did mention this, the study about water rates and restructuring those rates to capture a stormwater fee. Right now, nobody's paying for the stormwater coming off their property. So if that property has a large impervious surface, think a parking lot, that is discharging to a wastewater treatment plant. We're paying for the treatment of that, but the person who owns that property has no additional fee for that. And so we think that polluter should be paying for what is coming off of their property. And that could help drive a green infrastructure incentive. There could be a rate structure that would drive on private property a reduction in stormwater rates or a reduction in water rates based on installation of green infrastructure. And I just want to share two other things that are game changers that were not on my list to talk about, but as we mentioned, Tibbetts Brook is the daylighting Tibbetts Brook would be a tremendous green infrastructure project for the city. This is priority. This is an essential project. It would take 200 million gallons out of the CSO system every year out of Harlem River, which is severely inundated by CSO. And it would have community benefits, community cohesion. It would bring green infrastructure, and we're hoping a sort of park, a greenway to that area. This is not the only opportunity in New York City to daylight a waterway. And I think the next one, as we're looking forward, is going to be Casino Park in Queens, or Casino Creek in Queens. The second is Rikers Island and renewable Rikers. There's potential to close 4 existing treatment plants and build a treatment plant on Rikers Island when it closes in 2027. The city's studying this right now. There is also the potential there to reduce CSO, to bring CSO that's currently dumping into places like Flushing Creek, Harlem River, the Upper East River, and bring it directly to a plant here to treat it, to capture and treat it. This is in addition to other renewable energy and battery storage resources that we think might fit on that island. So we're very hopeful that there will be an opportunity on Rikers Island for water quality and for green energy. And it's such a tremendous example of restorative justice, and could be and should be the shining light of restorative justice right here in New York City. So I'll stop there. I know that was a lot, and I'm glad to discuss it further with all of you.